Alright, got another video I'm going to do today. One of my Cat 735s, I have to rebuild the transfer case. It's the 6-wheel drive transfer case on the machine. I rebuilt this about not even 2 years ago, and it's got about 3,500 hours on it. And somebody overfilled the oil on it. These hold about 5.5 gallons of oil, and if you overfill them, it destroys it. You either cook it and wipe out all the bearings, or it just hydrolocks inside and you break the teeth off of the gears. They called me over, said, hey, look at this, it's making noise. I went over and looked at it, and I could hear the noise inside the transfer case. Pulled the dipstick and it was way over full. So we took it over to the area to work on it and drained the oil out, and it had 10 gallons of oil in it. So that extra 5 gallons of oil cost me over $10,000. We wiped out all 5 gears. You can see here, broken tooth on that one. Every gear has a broken tooth on it. And some of them are kind of hard to get. I've got 2 of the gears here that they had to come from Germany, or Belgium actually. Took me a week and a half to get those. And all these gears, they're around like $1,500 each, $1,200 each. It just adds up. There's 3 more gears right there in those boxes. Got about $1,200 in bearings for all these gears. So I've already taken it apart. I was in kind of a hurry when I took it apart because I was taking my wife out of town for her anniversary. So I just ripped it apart so I could see what I needed, and that way I had time to order them, wait for the parts to come in while we were out of town. So now I've got all the parts finally. I just got the last gears yesterday afternoon. So now I need to get all the bearing races out. Get this thing steam cleaned, get all the metal debris and stuff out of it. Here's pieces of gear that's laying in there. It's just chunks of steel. We'll get that all cleaned up, and then I've got to press all the bearings onto all the gears. I've got to press all the races in to the cases, and I still take apart the planetary housing. This is a really kind of a cool deal on it. I actually don't 100% know how it works. But here's the input from the transmission. And what happens is when this truck is in normal mode, this transfer case puts 60% of the power to the front wheels. Because if you know what an articulated truck looks like, it's kind of long, single front axle, dual rear axle. And when you steer the machine, the front's got a ground speed of, just say you're going slow, it's got about 10 mile an hour ground speed, where the rear has barely any ground speed because it's just kind of following along as the thing curves around. So this planetary right here, took a power reducer, whatever they want to call it. It puts 60% of the power to the front, so the front's able to go faster. And in fact, there's a button on the floor you can push with your foot, and it changes this over. It slides it over. There's a piston and clutches in there, and it equalizes the power, so you have an equal amount of power to each axle. And when you're doing that, you can barely steer, because what happens is when you start steering too short or too sharp, the rear wheels aren't spinning fast enough, and they'll just chug it out and stall it out, or they'll start hopping and digging in the ground. And then there's also another button on the dash. Flip that button, push the button on the floor, and then it locks up the differentials as well. And you've got locked up 6-wheel drive. You can't steer at all. You have to go straight. So this thing's kind of cool. I really don't understand how it works. I know how to rebuild it. I kind of know how it works, but it's actually kind of a cool device. And there's a bunch of gears inside of it. Fortunately, this thing's in a different kind of a compartment inside of the transmission, or the transfer case, so it doesn't get the debris from the gears going bad in the other 2 sections of the transfer case. Fortunately, that saved me, another few $1,000s in gears. So, but I still have to pull that apart and just check the clutches on it again. I replaced the clutches last time I had it apart. So it should all be good inside, but I still have to inspect it. And then I'll just start pressing bearings, pressing races, clean this up, and start assembling it. It's going to be probably 6 hours of work for me. I'd say somewhere around 6 hours, maybe 8, probably 6. So anyways, here it is. Okay, so I'm getting ready to start removing all the races. I guess they call them a cup. I just call it a bearing race. The tapered roller bearings. So some of these to get out, there's a couple where you can get a punch on the backside and beat them out. But for the ones that are dead-ended in there, where there's no way to get a punch behind them, there's 2 really good ways to get those out. One of them is to take, welding rod or get your welder, your arc welder, and just weld a bead around it. And then when that shrinks, when it cools down, it shrinks and it sucks the whole thing in, and you can just lift it right out. Another way is just to use a torch. I just use a oxygen acetylene torch, and I'll just demonstrate on one real quick here. You just heat it up, red stripe across it, and do maybe 2 or 3 if you want. And then what that does is when when you heat it up red, the molecules expand, right? That's what heat does to steel, does to just about everything. It expands it, so it causes it to expand. But since there's nowhere for it to go, say I heat up a strip right here, that's going to expand, and there's nowhere for it to go, so it's trying to push out, right? But it can't because it's already so tight in there. What it does is then it compresses the molecules that you heated up. It actually compresses them, and then when it cools off, they shrink and it ends up smaller. So then it pulls it together, and this thing will just slide right out. Either just jiggle it out with a bar. If you do it right and you get lucky, they'll just fall out. You flip it over, they'll just fall right out. You can reach in and grab them. So that's all you need to do, just heat up a strip like that. Sometimes I'll do 2 or 3 strips just to hope it shrinks better. I don't know if it does. Sometimes it seems like it does better with just one, because you just have one spot that's compressing, and so when it cools off, it shrinks more, falls right out. All right, I've got some of this stuff sorted out. I took and unboxed all the bearings after I heated up the races to start getting those to shrink. Something happened. Usually I always order my stuff on SysWeb, and I didn't this time because I was up in Sacramento, so I called the order in, and 2 sets of bearings and races did not get ordered somehow. They're on my list, so I don't know what happened. So I can't put bearings on these 2 gears right now, but I'm going to go ahead and today get the rest of the gears, get their bearings pressed on. I'll get the old races out, get the housings cleaned up, get the races pressed in, and that'll be it, because the parts are not in stock. I have to wait for them to come in from the Cat warehouse in Bakersfield, so that throws me back another day. This is kind of how it always goes, it seems like, with these. I should have, when the boxes showed up, I should have went through an inventory to see what came in and what didn't come in. I think this happens just about almost every time, it seems like. But anyways, I've got the time-lapse camera set up on the press, and I'm going to go ahead and press these bearings on. So there's kind of 2 ways to do the bearings. When I'm out in the field, I have to heat them up and put them on. But since I'm here in the shop, I have my press, I'd rather just do that. Basically what you do with the torch method, I lay this on the steel workbench, heat it up with my torch to 275 degrees, and you just slide it right on. And it's like probably 3/1000 press, but just heating it up swells it up that much. You just slide it on, spin it a little bit, and it cools off and it's locked in place, which is good. It's a really good method to use. You just don't want to overheat the bearing, obviously. But since I have the press, we'll just use it, save me money and gas, oxygen and acetylene, and it's just easier. Okay, so I got the bearings, or as I call them, cones, pressed under those gears. So while that was while I was doing that, these races were cooling down that I heated up. I already just lifted 2 out real quick, but it's just to show you how easy they come out after you heat them up like that. Come on. See, that easy. Those were pressed in. They probably had 3/1000 press on them, or whatever they put on these. So it just goes to show you how easy that is to do. You could do it by welding too, but with the welding method you get a lot of mess, which I guess doesn't matter because I have to clean it up anyways, but I'd just rather not have that much heat go through the case. It's a cast iron case. If you get too hot, it's going to sinter, and it's just going to cause all kinds of problems with it. So it's just the easiest way, I think, the cleanest way. All right, now I need to remove the bearings from the planetary housing. These ones are a little bit more of a pain in the butt just because of where they are. But I'm just going to use the torch method to heat them up. Sometimes this doesn't work. Probably like 75% of the time it works. Once in a while, for some reason, the bearing just doesn't want to slide off. It just sticks, and then you have to cut the stupid thing. And it's always a pain in the butt. Just get debris all over everything. You get a lot more heat on there than you want. First thing we do is we cut the cage. We get all the roller bearings out. And then we just kind of try to evenly heat up the race. And hopefully if we get the race to heat up before the part that the race is pressed onto, then this gravity will help us out here and slide right off. Like that. And that's the easy way to do it. Here it is. Once I remove the yoke, it'll come off here. I have to leave the yoke on until I split the gears out of here, because otherwise there's a gear in here that could slide in and it'll damage it if it gets in there wrong. So you have to do it in sequence. But it's just hanging there. So all I have to do is pull the yoke off, that's off. Then I can heat up the new bearing and then just slide the new bearing on and it'll lock right into place. So now let's try it on the second one. See if we get lucky twice in a row. Yeah, that one didn't go. I think what it is sometimes the part that it's on is so thin that it heats up too quickly, and so it heats up with the bearing. When you get on something thicker, then it can absorb a lot more heat before it swells up. So, what a pain. Now I gotta go ahead and cut it. Oh well. Alright, I'm back. It's now Thursday. Hopefully I've got all the parts that I need to finish this. So just these 4 bearings and races right here from Cat, $800. That's crazy. There was some aftermarket available, or not really aftermarket, but they were, I think they're a Bauer brand or something like that I could have purchased from another company. But I didn't know if they'd get here in time, and it was only going to save me about $300 plus tax. And those bearings are actually very critical. They're a very interesting kind of a bearing on that part of the machine. It actually doesn't get set up with any shims or anything. You know, this box is made in Germany, and the Germans are, I mean, their precision is just, it's unmatched by anybody else. And this section, the case, the 2 cases going together are actually that perfect, that it's set up that it does not need to be shimmed, that it's going to be right. So it's got this race that has this shoulder in it, and it's not a tapered, excuse the camera angle here, it's not a taper roller bearing, it's just a flat roller bearing. Like that, and it fits in there, and it's a perfect fit when this case is put together. So it presses in here, and then one presses in over there, and when it comes back together it sits in there and it holds it just right. And it's these 2 gears that are up in the top end, and I'm guessing they don't have any side loading or anything, so that's why Cat can get away with not using a tapered roller bearing. That's why they're able to use that flat one. But you know, honestly, if this thing was made in the USA, or if it was made in Asia or some other place, the tolerances wouldn't be that perfect. They would be, you would have to shim this thing. They would have a set of shims for here, or they would have something set up on the deck to be able to shim it. But the Germans are incredible with their precise they make this stuff. Even on the other gears, ones with the tapered roller bearings, every one of these transfer cases that I've rebuilt, they have shims for them. You know, this is shim packs laying on the ground. It's 2 shim packs. I've just started out by putting the original shim packs back in. And then I put the dial indicator on there, check the end plate, and it's been perfect every time. I've never had to add or remove a shim. And that's after using a different gear, different bearings, and just rebuilding the thing. That's how good their tolerances are. We're usually, you know, if it's a case that's made, you know, in the States or you know, who knows where else. When you shim something like that, you shim these end plates, or, you know, these retainer plates, you know, with the whole, you know, put the gear in there and you shim it, and the plate is what you're shimming out, you know, to set the tolerance. You're always making adjustments. You're adding shims, you're taking shims, because they're all different. But these are incredible. That's why I really, you know, I enjoy rebuilding these things from, you know, these German-made components, because I just to look at the care and that they put into it, and to keep those tolerances that perfect. It's good to see. I wish everybody would do that when they engineer to build this stuff. All right, so I've got 2 of the gears in the case now. I've got the case on. So the case takes no shims or anything, but it just takes a sealant. It's like a flexible gasket maker sealant that they use. And actually I didn't even check to see, but this gear should spin free. Yes, it does. That just shows you the German engineering right there. I mean, that thing fits in there perfect. Okay, so I figured out my clearances on here. I've got about 4 thousandths end play on them, which is good. And this has this update in here, and there's one thing I had to go look at on SysWeb is to see which way to put this spacer. Of course, the service manual doesn't tell you how to put it in, and you kind of take some studying of looking at the latest parts page for that, which actually the parts book doesn't show it, but if you go on SysWeb, you can find it on there. And this sits up inside on the other side of this brass caged roller here. So the reason this has a lot more to it than just a regular output flange. It's got this updated adapter that presses in here into the gear. That this bolt goes in that retains the yoke. And then it's got the bearings for the gear, and then it has another bearing here for the yoke to support it even more. And so I was trying to see which way the spacer sits, and it sits with this narrow edge in here towards this bearing in here, so it's going to sit like that. If you get it backwards, I don't know if it would do any damage, but it's kind of strange the way Cat did that. But this thing does need a lot more support because you have the hitch right behind here, so the whole machine's articulating behind it, and you have the driveline hanging off of here. Whereas on the input driveline and the front axle driveline, they don't have that movement on them, so there's a lot of stress put on this. And the old style, before we had this update in here, every once in a while this retainer bolt for this yoke would break off, and it's kind of a hard spot to get to, and you'd have to reach all the way down inside here, you know, through this hole all the way down into here to get the broken bolt out. Other than that, the only other way to fix it would be to remove this cover and the gear. You can do it in the frame, but it's very difficult. But it is a lot easier than pulling the whole thing out just to do it. But so far with this update, it's been pretty good. It's just a little confusing. Cat wasn't very clear on how to install the update completely. Every time I do one of these, I have to sit there and refigure it out again. Alright, so I didn't get this finished up last night. I got a call from a friend, had to run out and help him out. I didn't get back till late, so I'm going to finish it up this morning. All I have left is to pick up the planetary unit and drop it into the housing, mount the cover on it, and that'll be it. I just load it up in my truck, take it out, and I've got a buddy coming out to help me put it in, so we'll get that done today. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and leave any comments about what I'm doing here. If you'd like to see any more of this stuff, let me know. And if you'd like to see something different, let me know. I want to do another video out on the job, you know, showing the machines working out there. So I hope to get that done pretty soon. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.